Okay, first of all, this is a response to your video about House of the Rising Sun, and I see you're going through a lot of different songs, learning how to play them, and that's great. I'm also glad to see another Guild-Gad 25 natural out there. They're great guitars. Hang on to that one. I've posted a couple of comments in there like, what's this other guitar you're playing? What's that electric in the background? Anyway, you go. You're doing great. I would just say watch your tempo and just offer you a few alternatives. I'm using a G7 capo. They're a little expensive, but and the Kaisers work real well. I've got Kaisers in all my cases, but I just bought the G7 and it's been a wonderful capo. I'd recommend House of the Rising Sun on the second fret because it's kind of low in 440 tuning, and you just stick it on there and it goes. Tempo, big deal in music. You want to make sure, and I was asking questions about a pick. I didn't notice if you were using a pick. It seems like you're just using your fingernails, although I could be wrong. Good idea to get used to using a plectrum, whatever kind you like, whatever thickness you like. I like the mediums that you can pick up, the little teardrop ones from the music stores. Although lately I've been trying these tri-cornered deals. You probably can't even see that on camera, but I use these tri-cornered. It doesn't matter what the name is. I just like the idea that there's 3 corners in case one goes bad. I got 2 others, and I'm learning how to get used to these. House of the Rising Sun. If you have to tap your foot to keep tempo, that's alright. It's one of the first songs I learned. There is a house in New Orleans. Hear the tempo? They call the rising sun. Been the ruin of many a poor boy, and God, I know I'm one. Now you can make the song your own. You can modify it whatever way you want. You'll notice I put some embellishments in there with the E chord. I made it an E major 7th, or an E minor 7th rather. You can develop it as you go along, but watch your tempo. Keep your tempo up to at least a close proximity of the tempo of the song. There are times when folks take a very well-known song and change it completely. I'm trying to think of a good example right now. Al Stewart, not Al Stewart. Shoot, I can't think of it. Anyway, there's this one particular artist I know recently has taken some of his songs from the 60s, Rod Stewart, and he has slowed them down. Maggie May was faster in his original version, and then he did a slower version. So you can take those kinds of liberties. You can change the tempos on some songs to make it new and interesting. And really, that's one of the most important things I could tell you is you want to make sure that you are unique and individualistic. So because people listen more closely when you create something a little different than the way it's done. There's a lot of folks that put videos out there and they do covers of songs and they try to emulate them as closely as possible, like Beatles tribute bands and stuff like that. And that's fine, and there's a market for that. But there's always a better market for uniqueness, individualism. Bob Marley is a good example of that in reggae. Alison Krauss is a good example of that in bluegrass. Tracy Chapman is a good example of that with her uniqueness. Leon Redbone is unique. Alice Cooper had a certain level of uniqueness in his day. But it was always the unique sounding artists that had a gimmick. You know, I think of Ozzy Osbourne eating the head off a bat and stuff and doing crazy things. It's not so much about what you do that's crazy, although that does get you attention. It's about how unique you are. Cite an example. If you've never heard of the Tractors, sort of a country rock band. Boston, another example of a band that came out with a unique style of music. Boston was straight out hard rock, not hard heavy metal, but just straight out rock beat, traditional rock. But the problem was that after, and they got some attention for being a very, you know, standard rock sound. But that's all their stuff ever was. That you got to the second album and so forth, and it was very repetitive. People got bored with it quickly. So along with uniqueness comes diversity. When the Beatles went from their early '60s sound and then migrated over to, you know, some of their other ones like Help and Hard Day's Night and so forth, and they started to gradually change and developed some very unique, new sounding stuff, some stuff that they couldn't replicate on stage, by the way, and that's another thing. You want to be able to replicate what you do, but diversity and uniqueness are good characteristics. So when I talk to you about tempo on a song, that's assuming that you want to play it the way you've heard it. I always think it's a good idea to learn it the way it's done and then take it from there. I'll give you an example. I learned Blackbird years ago in college. Okay, and all the way through. Then I started messing around with it. I have to remember what I did now. So you can take themes and you can turn them into something else. But you learn the original first, then you modify it, then you play with it. So when I give you ideas about tempo on a song that's well known, that's just one of those songs that's well known. And it's kind of like I was watching another fella talking about playing country songs, and he was talking about playing John Denver. Excuse me, not John Denver, Johnny Cash. And he said, you want to make sure you get those two bass notes in there, and you want to kind of mute the rest of them when you're doing this. And I've been playing Johnny Cash since I was a kid, and he's right. In terms of the style, but then you change it out later on to whatever you want to do with it. Uniqueness, creativity, but learn the right tempos and the right way it's played first, and then develop your own style. You're doing great. Keep it up.